That's what she said. When we're backstage, y'all, we are killing each other over here. It's a laugh a minute.
So we're back. It's Tuesday. It's Mark Lindsay and Eloy Escajedo. And nothing. We hope you enjoyed your weekend. We hope you did your homework because we're going to review everything we talked about last week, which I kind of forgot what the heck we even talked about at this point.
Yeah,
Just kidding.
you and me
No
both.
tests. No tests.
Good. Glad to hear
So,
it.
what's been going on with you?
Okay, I wanted to wait. I was going to talk to Eloy about this backstage before we hit the button. I thought, no, because there's somebody else who knows what I'm talking about. Steve, you know what I'm talking about in this subject. I've only been talking about this for 5 or 6 years. All of this landscaping I've been doing, all the hardscaping, hauling around gravel and building flower boxes and digging trenches and everything else. I finally completed the walkway around the backyard. I finally moved the last wheelbarrow of gravel all the way around to the back of the house. I got to tell you, I like it. It looks pretty good. It only took me 5 years to do it. I had to go back and count 5 years, but I eventually got it all done. And oh my God, am I glad that's over with. The next step, we have two things coming next year. One is we got to build a new deck. And two is we're finally putting in a lawn because what we have now is weeds holding hands. So I'm just happy to have that all behind me.
Um, well, I can tell you, walking. One thing that I haven't told you, walking with Vigo,
Mm-hmm.
and he is getting up there in age, or I mean, literally, I mean, he's really getting up there in age. But he enjoys a good walk like any other puppy or dog. And one of the things that I've found is that it wasn't so much the case prior, but it appears to be the case now that more and more people have dogs now. Where it used to be that you'd walk around and you see a bunch of kids on bikes, skateboards, this and that. Now you see people, women and men, every age. So human beings have been replaced by dogs as the comfort thing. At least in this area, it's seen, and there's big dogs, small dogs, this and that. But just the other day, or just yesterday, actually, I took Vigo out, and um, I think Vigo's taken on my personality because he wants nothing to do with any other creature. Like he's like really attached to the way I, because I'm very standoffish with other
Mm-hmm.
people. I like to talk with folks, but you get the point.
Yeah.
And so, but this girl had these two dogs free range, and they ran right up to Vigo, and Vigo's like, "Whoa, whoa!" And there were these two big poodles. They weren't standard poodles; they were just like poodles, but they were still huge. For poodles, freaking animal, savagely sized,
Mm-hmm.
and they wouldn't let us pass. And the girl comes up, a younger girl. She comes up, and she just stands. So here's the thing that I noticed. I notice it frequently. People do not engage in any dialogue to disarm any situation. Um, oh, sorry, my dogs are friendly, or they're just curious, or hey, good evening, or good afternoon, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
She just stood there observing the scenario, and I'm like, and so I said something to the effect of, "May we pass?" And then I asked a few questions, nothing to relay, and I've seen that in my frequent
Yeah.
journeys with many freaking people. It's almost like I went to the barber shop a few days ago because
Mm-hmm.
it was time and it was getting out of hand and stuff. Um, and Likewise, usually barbers are. There seems to be, maybe I'm just running across people that don't freaking. But there's no, in a situation. There's excuse me. Oh, by the way, or hey, hi, or can I help you, or thank you for shopping, or oops, sorry, I ran into you on the street, or like there's a whole number of things that I don't
Yeah.
know. I guess we were handed it down from the previous generation and we took it on board, but maybe with all these people not having babies, and now it's been a few generations, there's sort of a little disconnect. I mean, it's not like we're
Uh,
empty of new generations, but the the dogs have replaced the as the family member.
I blame it on this. I blame it on this. I bet you if you'd have texted that woman, you wouldn't have been able to get away from her. If you were texting with her, you would have never been able to get away from her. I've noticed that as well. People are less chatty. They don't want to talk. They don't want to interact with people.
Yeah,
People go out of their way to avoid interaction with other people. I mean, you can get just about anything you want anymore and not talk to a single person.
but I found someone
That.
when I was at Publix because I walked there, as you know.
Uh-huh.
Nothing has changed on that front. I walked to Publix,
Mm-hmm.
went in and got all my stuff and this, and that. By
Mm-hmm.
the way, when I walk in, I usually weigh myself on this big weighing
Okay.
scale. Thank you, thank you. In Spanish, in Miami.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, I sent you. I hate to deviate from the thing, but I'm gonna forget everything, and that's why I deviate, and then I forget the. But I gotta tell you, that video I sent you,
Mm-hmm.
what I just did right now
Mm-hmm.
reminds me of one of those problems. I
Yeah.
grew up in Miami, as you know, and I said I was going to say that weight thing,
Mm-hmm.
but the word is scale, and I know it's scale, but
Mm-hmm.
in Spanish, the word for weight.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, see, I did it. I did it again. The weight, for, the word for scale
Mm-hmm.
is weight, and so a lot of the Spanish words for Miamians, not all the time, but are transposed into English.
Mm-hmm.
And so whereas even though I know that it's scale, but you hear people saying, "Oh no, because I'm going to get on the weight." And
Mm-hmm.
you hear it in Spanish, and since the brain mixes the two things and this and that, you end up saying what I just did,
Mm-hmm.
which is a good example of that one video that I had shared with you that one time.
Yep.
What do you
Yep.
think of that?
Well, not being bilingual, I can't relate to it, but I hear it a lot. I just never really thought about it in that respect.
Yeah.
I've heard some people refer to it as Spanglish because it's mostly Spanish with English words thrown in. I've always assumed that was just because you pick up like brand names. I mean, Pepsi Cola is Pepsi Cola no matter where in the world you go. Coca Cola, Burger King, whatever. It's the same no matter where you go. So that's what I assumed it was. But from that video you sent me, evidently it's not. But I didn't realize it was that ingrained, that entrenched in the area.
English and Spanish.
Mhm. But you were talking about your trip to Publix before we get way off topic again.
No, I'll remember. Okay, fine. We'll go back to the thing. But
Mhm.
this topic is also good. But anyways, so I went in, and every time I go in, the scale's there.
Mhm.
The huge industrial sized ones, the kind
Yeah.
that they put at the entrances of these said
Yeah.
supermarkets at times. And I usually weigh myself.
Mhm.
But for the past two walking trips to
Mhm.
Publix, which is quite the feat, let me tell you right now, um, it's been broken. The scale has.
Mhm.
The last time I went, I walked in, and when I was leaving, the manager with two
Mhm.
assistants were dragging the scale, the brand new scale into place,
Mhm.
And as I was walking, I stopped on purpose.
Mhm.
And I said, "Oh, did they just fix?" The manager turned and looked at me, and I said, "Oh, did they just fix the scale?" And he went like that, and I said, "That must mean that flights to Cuba are back on, right?" And here's the joke with that: that no
Mhm.
one would get unless they're. I mean, it's kind of goofbally as it
Mhm.
is just hearing that. But here's the thing: in Miami, and unbeknownst to many folks that aren't necessarily here in Miami, we have a lot of people here
Mhm.
from Cuba, obviously, and a lot of people that travel to Cuba.
Mhm.
And what they do is they take stuff over there to supplement, well, one, to supplement their family members
Mhm.
that don't have anything,
Yeah.
or to sell.
Mhm.
In our family, I'll say it point blank, we find it traditionally throughout the years
Mhm.
um, very distasteful
Mhm.
due to when we left.
Yeah.
And when I mean we, just my family, I obviously
Yeah.
you know that I was born here, but because of the exit that they had. But generationally, decade after decade after, there's other Cubans
Mhm.
that don't have the same point of view.
Yeah.
So you have a generational continuance,
Mhm.
and then you have other people that have different points of view as to what's acceptable. So the original reason for people exiting, which was the search for freedom and the toppling of said overseas government in order to reinstall democracy, let's say, that concept is not in the minds of tons of people
Right.
that hail from said place.
Mhm.
Parallel in the world that we live here in Miami. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that there's not necessarily this one track no at all. There's all
Yeah.
sorts of weird stuff happening. In any event, I told him, you know, I told him, oh, so that must be like a little tongue in cheek kind of thing, because what they do is they take the product to the weight because it's the most accurate one before taking it to the airport, so they can gauge how much they have to pay or have to pay, and
Mhm.
then collect from said family members or people in Cuba or
Mhm.
people here paying for shipment of medicines over there and such and this and that. So you'll usually walk into any place that has a scale,
Mhm.
and you'll see people with huge bags using the scale to gauge how much they're taking, as opposed to using it for what it is.
Mhm.
And so that was the kind of the joke there. It only works if you're
Yeah.
here,
Yeah.
but it is, at least in my mind, it was damn knee slapping hilarious.
How did he react?
And he just smiled, like saying, "Yeah,"
Yeah.
because it's
Okay.
true. It's something you see.
Well, now I'd heard stories about people like on a flight over, they'll like wear 6 pairs of pants and 15 shirts and 3 jackets and stuff like that to take to their families. Is that true?
Yeah.
That is true. Okay. I'd heard that anecdotally, but you know,
Don't get
you
me
take it with
wrong.
a grain of
Throughout the
salt.
years, my family has sent
Mhm.
for medicine purposes and so I mean that's
Yeah.
not, but the concept of this, let's put it as extreme as, not as extreme as, pretty accurate in a
Mhm.
sense, in where it's applicable, to come and to and fro
Mhm.
as if there's no, for fun, for kicks,
Mhm.
as if it's just another day, has it's always kind of been around, but it was looked down on because
Mhm.
people left for a reason.
Yeah.
And sure, you're talking about over 60 years now.
Mhm.
So you're right. I mean, or it's true. You can't hold on to, I mean, what happened happened, but what happened ruined the prosperity of countless individuals,
Yeah.
of the people that I come from,
Mhm.
many of which had settled there at the beginning of the century,
Mhm.
only to have everything uprooted to them 50 years later, and then having to relocate. So there's a lot of people that don't see it humorous, or don't see that these people go back
Yeah.
and forth. But again, I understand send medicine, you need this, that. But just the whole fun and happy go lucky, and
Yeah.
let your wig hair down and have a fun time. It's almost a little bit insulting
Hmm.
on a historical count.
Yeah.
So I told him that, and I
Hmm.
left, whatever. But then now this last time, like a day or two ago, I went and I got my stuff, and when I was coming out, when I came in, the scale was broken again. And so I go and do my stuff, and as I'm leaving again, there's this very nice looking lady, very nice looking lady
Hmm.
on the scale, but it's not moving anywhere.
Hmm.
I don't know if she was like really enjoying the fact that it was stuck at the bottom or not. I don't know what the story was going on. She was just standing there on it, and I said, "Oh, it's been broken for a few for a few weeks." And I was packing my stuff because I stopped by the little push carts
Hmm.
to put my stuff in these bags that I have that are
Yeah.
handy for walking. And she engaged with me, and anything that I threw at her in a normal conversation, she would retort and continue the engagement. And she was like this pretty number, and I'm here engaging, and she's engaging back, and this and that. I was like, oh my goodness, look at this lady is totally engaging, and this and that. But eventually, um, um, calmer minds prevailed, and I said, okay, well, bye bye, and I left.
Hmm.
Um, but I took note of it, and the reason I'm bringing this up, well, she was pretty cute, but whatever. The reason I'm bringing this up is that in conjunction with this doggy thing and this people don't talk anymore,
Hmm.
I found her out of place in that respect,
Hmm.
where people will say maybe a couple of things and disconnect, but
Hmm.
she was continuously. So she was probably also hungry for human back and forth,
Interaction. Yeah.
right? um it just pleasantries and just a little bit more than just and I'm sure just seeing that there is a whole lot of people, like what we were saying, that they don't talk
Hmm.
except minimal stuff like
Well,
the cell phone, and then there's some out there in the mix that are like, well, hey, there was a time when people actually had pleasantries with each other, as opposed to what I see a lot of. If you interact with somebody drops something on the floor, just like you see on YouTube, and you say, "Hey, look, you dropped this." If it's some lady and stuff, they're like, oh, oh. Or if you try to open the door for a
yeah.
lady, oh, oh,
Well,
oh, 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 and
which
it's like,
is which is why people of a certain age, I mean, and I'll count myself as a part of that, who are used to interacting with folks, striking up conversations in the checkout line, or just, coming to a mutual agreement that this guy is a real idiot, that kind of thing. I think people of our age are kind of hungry for that. We're kind of hungry for that interaction because the people back behind the cash register, they don't want to talk. They just want to, scan stuff and
yeah,
next. And you go to the car parts store to grab a quart of oil and an oil filter, a few quarts of oil and an oil filter. They don't want to talk. They just want to hurry up and get you out of there. So they can get on to the next person. I understand it's a job. You've got a job to do. You're not there to, uh, have a group discussion, but a little bit of pleasantry can go a long way. And I think with a lot of people who are, again, of our age, we kind of miss that. We kind of get a little bit hungry for it. So when you find somebody who is of a like mind, who will just come up and say something, anything, like you saying, "Oh, that's been broken for a couple of weeks." That was all she needed. Ah, this guy doesn't mind talking.
exactly. I mean, it's like that meme.
Hmm.
I don't know if you've seen it, but it's like it's just a picture,
Hmm.
and it's in an auto parts store,
Hmm.
and like the meme says the guy walks up, the customer walks up and says, "Hi," and the other guy says, "Make and model number." Like
Yeah,
there's no
absolutely.
there's no what's the in between part, like
Hmm.
hi, well, this is what I'm looking for, this and that. Obviously you're going to get to that,
Uh-huh.
make and model, but can you at least begin the process, make and model, because
Yeah,
I know they have their list and
yeah,
they're in the computer, and all they really want to hear is make and model and what the darn thing we don't want to hear.
yeah.
And my rubber ducky got stuck in the
Hmm.
toilet. They don't want to hear all the
Doesn't
details.
have air conditioning. Dude, I need windshield wipers. The windshields aren't different.
Yeah.
Now, I understand some of that. Some of that, it's the software. It won't let you go any further to look for windshield wipers until you tell them what engine, what transmission, and does it have air conditioning. It won't let you go look for windshield wipers until you have all that in there.
Yeah.
So I can understand some of it, but I mean, dude, we can commiserate over the fact that you have to know it.
Yeah, there's
So, but I think to tie this all back in, I think that's why you're noticing more dogs out on the street, is because people spend so much time, especially younger folks, spend so much time trying to avoid contact with people. They still have that loneliness thing going on, so you have a lot more people with dogs, a lot more people with cats, because it's another living critter that you can, you know, talk to. You might have you probably have conversations with Vigo 5 times a day.
oh yeah, we talk about Plato's cave, and he looks
Oh,
at me, and I know that when he looks at me, that he's giving me the right answers.
yeah, exactly. I mean, there's just all kinds of goofy stuff, but the dog isn't going to give you any trouble. The biggest trouble the dog is going to give you is maybe he didn't make it out the door fast enough when he needed out.
Well, so in a sense, although this may be the age of less baby production,
Hmm.
it's a great time to be a puppy dog.
I am
There's
compared
options.
speaking,
Puppies
yeah.
have. They no longer. It's going to get to a point where
Hmm.
dogs. It's no longer you going to the dog pound and choosing. No, you go and you fill out the thing, and they review
Yeah, the
for you.
dogs will walk past you and be like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
I want this girl. I want that guy."
All right, sir. Sir, and you and your family get in that little cage. The dogs will walk by, and they will decide. You will be. They will let you know,
Mhm. It's exactly,
and they'll be
you go.
like, "What's your what are your thoughts on kibble versus wet food?"
Yeah, it says, finish this sentence. Kibbles and uh, it's
Next.
yeah,
So what's your stance on weekend walks in the park?
that's it.
How
Are
do you
you a
feel
are
about?
you are you a messy eater? And if is me stationing myself underneath your chair at the dinner table going to be a problem? Yeah,
Answer this question: what is the preferable parts of the body to sniff
yeah,
frequently?
really. All of the above. But yeah, I mean, I've noticed that too. There are a lot more people out walking around with pets. A lot more people walking around with pets. And half of the time, I mean, that's strange to me. Okay, because I've always had a yard. And 99 times out of 100, dog needs to do its business. You open the door. If he doesn't have a doggy door so he can come and go as he please,
Yeah,
you open up the door and the dog goes out and does his business and comes in when he wants to. He'll scratch on the door and let you know. You open the door and let him in.
yeah.
So putting a dog on a leash and walking it, I have very, very limited experience with that. About the only time any of my dogs were ever on a leash is if they were going to the vet or to a groomer or something like that.
Yeah.
Because we didn't take them to town. We didn't take them to the store. You see people all over the place with driving down the road and the dog's up in their lap and everything's hanging their head out the window. Wasn't like that with us.
We had a dog. The earliest I remember, we had a dog here. His name was Tony, and he was a German Shepherd.
Hmm.
And I guess I don't know because I never asked further. But when my parents moved out here, purchased here,
Mm-hmm.
and left Little Havana for here,
Mm-hmm.
this place was a little bit like not secluded, but it was kind of a little bit rural,
Mm-hmm.
sufficient that when they left their house to go work in Miami
Mm-hmm.
and that long drive, they probably needed a guard dog. And the most famous type of guard dog, at least I guess, is the German Shepherds.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so my dad bought one,
Mm-hmm.
and his name was Tony. And ever since I was little, all I ever knew was Tony. And Tony would walk up to the window, and I'd see him and stuff. And so I've always had dogs. But Tony, unbeknownst to me, later a neighbor was walking by. This guy with long hair, and it's like, who are you? Well, it turned out to be, after we got to talking, that he was one of the young kids here at the time when my parents came. He was just a little kid going to school, so he's a little bit older than me, probably
Mm-hmm.
within your range of, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe in between, slightly, just not
Okay.
too far away. He's got to be in his in that range.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he said, "Oh man, and in talking, he said, when we were kids, your dog would jump the fence and walk us to school, to the bus stop. And
Mm-hmm.
when we all left, he would just walk home. And then in the afternoons, because there was nothing here, dude.
Yeah.
And he said, and in the afternoons, he's talking about back in the 70s. He says, early 70s. He says, and in the afternoons, we'd all get let off the bus, and Tony would be sitting there in the corner, and he'd walk all the kids back home, and he'd jump the fence and get back into the house. And I was like, I was very thankful that he, and we became friends
Mm-hmm.
after the fact, because I never knew him.
Yeah.
It just goes to show there's people at least back there's people all around that are older than me, or at least
Mm-hmm.
back then, not anymore because these people moved away, um that knew who the heck we were, or that I
Yeah.
was, but I had no clue because they were just older generations.
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, I had no idea who they were. In any event, one time driving home from Little Havana, it was my dad and I and my mom, my dad and I, and we're driving down the main 109th, and as we're driving, Tony appears next to us, you know, keeping up the pace with us on the street.
Jeez.
And my dad looks down, and I said, "Look, it's Tony." My mom, "It's Tony. He's supposed to be at home." Well, he jumped the fence because he was a good jumper. And my dad said, "Get back home, go get it." Like he's, and Tony freaking took off.
Mm-hmm.
So Tony was super smart, you know. Unfortunately, still when I was little, it ended up that he had to be taken away because something happened. Um, I had a neighbor friend over, and I told him, "Don't." We were kids. Don't walk to the bowl. Don't walk to the bowl while he's eating. And he's like, "Ah!" He went to the bowl. Tony was eating,
Mm-hmm.
and he went gruff gruff on the leg.
Yeah.
It became a huge problem, and so they had to, that it was crazy.
Yeah.
And that was the end of that, unfortunately. But I always remember that. It's one of the things that hurt me because I remember it being a little, not knowing life at all, but knowing that you don't approach the dog. This
While they're
kid,
reading. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that was unfortunately, and the story was that he was taken to a farm, but you know how that goes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what can you say?
Unfortunately, yeah, I
Yeah.
almost, yeah, because just thinking about it, you feel
Yeah.
the thing.
I know. I know. It's. I, there have been stretches in my life where I didn't have a dog, but I've had dogs most of my life.
Yeah,
And usually the times that I didn't have a dog was because I wasn't in a position to have one. you know I mean, I was single or in the army living in the barracks, or we were stationed over in Germany, couldn't really get a dog over there. Stationed in Hawaii, we moved around too much, and I mean, just a lot of things, so we just didn't get one until we were stationed in Hawaii. We got a Springer Spaniel and brought him back to the mainland with us. And when Linda got out of active duty, and took him to Nevada. That dog was a world traveler, had a better pedigree than most of the people I know. And he was bred in Australia, transported to Hawaii, and sold to a friend of ours who couldn't keep him. We ended up getting him, and ended up in Nevada. So that dog went from Australia to Hawaii to Nevada, where he finally had to be put to sleep because he was just too old, not doing well at all. So, but right now we don't have any animals, and I'm not in a hurry to get another one. You know,
It's tough, man,
it
because
is.
there's something
But
humbling, endearing, undeniable about this creature that is vulnerable. Sure, they can defend themselves in certain cases, obviously, but they entrust everything. I mean, they have no choice at a certain level, but you see the noble character of them in general, where they accept you. They accept you. I mean, well, it's the smartest thing to do because there's food, shelter, but
well,
beyond that,
way beyond that, I've heard it said that a dog is the only animal that loves you more than it loves itself. And I think that there's a lot of truth in that. I really do.
yeah, there's
And you
murals.
know the old joke: put your wife and your dog, lock them in the trunk of your car, and come back in an hour and see which one of them is happy to see you. You know.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's murals in old Roman cities,
Mhm.
ancient ones made out of tiles and depicting a dog, either a
Mhm.
dog. There's one where the dog is shamefully, like, he spilled a vase or a jar full of wine,
Mhm.
and the wine jar is fallen on the ground, and the dog is going like this, like saying "oops," I see, with his little ears. And so this theme
Mhm.
has been with us for a very long time.
Oh yeah, for eons, for eons. Yeah, God love him. I mean, I am I'm a confirmed doggy kind of guy. That's it. I mean, everybody has that friend. You go to a party where there's a lot of people and you don't know everybody, and it's loud and everything. There's that one friend who's over in the corner playing with the dog. I am that guy. I mean, I'm a gregarious type of person. I can talk to basically anybody about anything, but most of the time, I'd rather play with the dog. You know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and I'm not much of a cat person, but it's not like I dislike them, but I know their treachery.
Mhm.
Oh, I know their
Oh,
treachery
cats are
well.
jerks. Cats are jerks, and that's all there is to it. I mean, I don't hate cats. I don't. It's just that, okay, cat's a cat. Great, fine, terrific. You know, God bless him. Go do your kitty cat thing wherever you're going to do it. It's just that I would prefer to have a dog. That's just me.
I mean, you know, um, they're incredible. Dogs are. It just is
How
what it
we
is.
got on this, I don't know, but I'm glad we did.
They're man's best friend, as far as I'm concerned. I think that that's a saying that is pretty darn good. They recognize us and our role just like
Mhm.
we recognize them and our role, and there's a mutual love that's unique to the two in combination.
And a mutual trust as well.
Yeah, like they look at us.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know what they're thinking, but it almost appears from my vantage point that they recognize that there's something there that's a
Hmm.
bond. Obviously, there's cases where that's not applicable, but you get what I'm saying.
I
Like,
do.
there's a recognition there mutually, and
Hmm.
it's fantastic.
But I think that's why you're seeing so many more, is because even though people don't want to interact with people as much as they used to, because let's face it, most of our interaction with people anymore is done through a keyboard or
Yeah,
through the touchscreen on our phone or something. And but we still need that interaction.
yeah,
And I'm just going to come right out and say it. I think a lot of people are getting animals because they're just lonely. And I don't know what I think about this trend of, and I'm dangerous. I'm kind of walking on dangerous ground here. I don't know about this trend of emotional support animals. I'm sure there are some people that genuinely need them for some diagnosis, but I can't help but think, what about your partner? Don't you get enough emotional support from your partner, be it wife, husband, whoever?
A
Don't you
lot
get
of
any emotional support from them?
you might be stepping into hot water because in theory, number one, we can't speak for everyone.
No, and I don't claim to. I don't attempt to. I just can't
No,
help but I can't help but have the question.
but I'm saying that that's already a stumbling block
Mhm.
for any viable, like anything is going to start with my assumptions are the following. There's plenty of people out there. I can't even picture them, but they exist. But what I can't picture is the number.
Mhm.
And how that looks like broadly. But I have examples from the past um, of people that do that you said that they lean on the confidence of their partner, let's say, family members or whatnot, but let's say they're partners. But here's where it gets messy. We're living in a world, it seems like, where the same structure and same old reliable things to lean on outside of just the partner,
Mhm.
but how the world, the value system, and what you emphasize that has value as opposed to what doesn't, in terms of can you really trust in another person? I may be projecting, but I'm trying to, because I know that's true for me.
I
I know
hear
that.
what you're saying. I really do hear what you're saying, but I think that's indicative of other problems. You
Well, yeah,
know,
that's what I'm saying. That there's many problems
certainly,
involved with this.
certainly, and I'm not trying to uh, I'm not trying to diminish that at all. I'm just saying that if you have a partner and you're in a marriage or a relationship or what have you, and you're not getting the emotional support you need, maybe you need to sit down and have a talk. I don't mean yell and scream and have an argument or a fight, but maybe there needs to be some discussion about that.
When people are young, go ahead.
People have many, many reasons, but when I can only go by my own personal experiences and my own personal conversations I've had with people. And the number of people who married people who I know that referred to an emotional support animal, I've never said anything. I've never asked them a question about it because it's just frankly none of my business. But I can't help but wonder, what about the person in the house? You know, they're not giving you emotional support. You feel the need to have, I mean, you got a cool dog and everything, but that has to be your companion because the other person in this relationship isn't enough. Maybe there's an issue.
Well, there is broadly speaking, there is an issue because
Mhm.
here's the thing that I've pinpointed in any situation. It's different if you have a buddy
Mhm.
and you can't see eye to eye on something
Sure.
over any given topic, controversial or not.
Mhm.
And the consequences of that, not seeing eye to eye,
Mhm.
is what it is. Take it or leave it.
Right.
It's different if you don't see eye to eye with someone at the workplace,
Mhm.
but and that has its consequences, especially if it's the boss. But it's another thing if you don't see eye to eye or can't properly communicate an idea or a feeling or a state of mind um, with a partner or a husband, wife, or whatnot
Mhm.
that's at home permanently.
And that's why I'm saying there's an issue there. There's an issue there. I mean, Linda and I don't see eye to eye on everything. We really don't. But in any relationship, you have to have a list of priorities, and you hear me say this all the time. You have to decide, is that the hill you're willing to die on? We don't see eye to eye all the time, and we have differences of opinion, but we don't let that get in the way, simply because at the end of the day, we still love and respect each other, and that's more important than any of the little differences we have of opinion. If she wants blue rugs in the kitchen and I think green would look better, well, we're going to have that discussion, and it's going to come down to who spends more time in the kitchen. Well, she does. Okay, then she's going to get blue rugs. It's not that important to me to drive that wedge between us, you know?
But that example you gave
Mm-hmm.
is, although it speaks of an attitude
Mm-hmm.
that one takes into this mutual agreement over an issue. You gave a specific thing, but we don't know
No, we don't.
other people's whatnots and the troubles of miscommunication that may or may not exist over whatever topic that might be meaningful to the one person in a way that does not allow them to
I get it.
overcome something, and the other person not understanding, or the other person maybe lighting a fire under the toes of the other one.
Mm-hmm. Or
There's
getting defensive or yeah, I understand that, and that's what I mean.
there's
That's
too
what I
many
mean
things.
about that's what I mean about interpersonal relationships. You've got to be able to have that discussion. You have to be able to have that talk. And if you can't, and it's it's easy for me to say this because I'm not in the position. If you can't, maybe that's the wrong person. I mean, if there are things that you just cannot get past, maybe you're just not a match.
Well, let me share this with you. I mean, this is within the. I see a
Mhm.
connection to it, but two movies that speak to this that you're saying,
Mhm.
or that we're talking about roughly. One is American Psycho,
Mhm.
and the other one I forget the name, but it was darn good movie. I'll have to look for it. The American Psycho. I don't know if you've seen that movie.
I haven't.
It's pretty extreme.
Mhm.
So there's this Wall Street guy back in the 80s or whatnot, or 90s, and he's in the circles of ultra day trading and whatnot, and this and
Yeah.
that. And with that circle of those high end day traders, it's a fast pumping life, and that, and the other. And his girlfriend is in those circles too. Their relationship is not based on these things that you're saying, as far as the movie's portraying it.
Mhm.
There's a willful ignoring
Mhm.
of the behaviors of the guy from the lady's part.
Mhm.
He's accepted by her as a potential husband, in
Mhm.
fact wanting to plan a marriage, because he fits all the qualifications.
Yeah.
The emotional side is non-existent, but she accepts it within this world. Now here's the thing, he's actually a psychopath.
Mhm.
She's overcome the object. She doesn't know he's a psychopath, but there's red flags everywhere. So
Mhm.
throughout the movie, he increases his killing spree,
Mhm.
and his psychopathy just continues to unravel until the point where he's screaming at her at a dinner saying, "I have the internal need to do mass murders, more, don't you understand? I don't want to be with you." And and in that moment, like, he's literally confessing,
Mhm.
"I have this bloodlust that I cannot stop. I just butchered, I don't know how many but in that dinner,
Mhm.
and then he's telling her that, she turns around and he says, "What were you saying?" Emphasizing that this relationship, she's not he meets all the criteria,
Mm-hmm.
and that one hiccup in the way, she's not going to pay attention to it. And I guess that's true. Nobody's perfect, but
Understood.
this is an extreme case of you're sleeping with the enemy. Let's
The
say.
enemy, yeah.
So you see, so although that's an exaggeration of a thing, but what it gets to is that we don't know all the variables
No, we
involved.
don't. We absolutely don't, and that's why I say I kind of understand it. I just kind of see it as sad myself. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'm just some romantic old, you know, old fashioned Pollyanna thinking son of a gun. But I still think that there has to be priorities, and my number one priority is us. And everything else we can work out. Everything else is just, that's it's the sprinkles on top of the cupcake.
That's your priority. I don't think that that's wrong. I think that that's actually, in fact, that's what I saw with my grandparents and my parents up to a point.
Hmm.
Um, for the most part, amicably, but there was hiccups as well. I mean, you would see
Oh, sure.
my grandfather, my grandmother was she had the Italian in her that they usually say,
Hmm.
um, and she was pretty explosive. Like when she wanted to put you in you watch out, and she did with me too. She's
Hmm.
get it. Like she was like um. And my grandfather dealt with that. You have to no. She was good hearted. She always fed everybody, and she was kind, and she thought of everybody and this and that. But if you got on her wrong side, she
Yeah.
was gonna tear you. Like she would tell neighbors if they said something she didn't like. I can't even tell you the bad word, but she would say a few choice words, and they'd freaking scoot.
Yeah.
But she wasn't doing it because she's mean.
Hmm.
She just had that sort of that sort of
That
spark and
temper.
fire.
Yeah.
Um,
But that's
so if
okay. But then again, if you look at them, she was the most important thing in his life. He was the most important thing in her life. And them being together was the most important thing to one another. That's all I'm talking about.
yeah, yeah, and so, but this idea of that why people may or may not, and then the dogs and this and that.
Hmm.
Um, we're not in the same world as before, where um the same rules apply.
Hmm.
Many rules apply, but not but some of the important rules that would be useful
Uh-huh.
have not only been um portrayed as passe or chauvinistic, or on the opposite side, I think the word is misandric.
Hmm.
um, there's a lot of things that have been stirred up and sort of like given different importances throughout the culture, broadly speaking. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that everybody's, but there's a theme out there, just like in the 80s there was a theme of, I don't know, Arnold Schwarzenegger and
Yeah.
Rambo and
It's all me. Give it to me. It's mine. It was the me generation, the me decade.
and there was a theme. So well, yeah, but the Rambo and the this and that,
Hmm.
I guess you could take it that way, and actually you would see that. But what I'm getting at is that that theme, you would start to see pop up people wearing karate suits just
Yeah.
here in my neighborhood. And so the culture the Hollywood push and news and this and that, I think that we're in a different world that's slightly the same and slightly different. And in the different ways that it is are these ways that we're pointing out right now that lead to things like people having more
Well,
dogs and having more
I can't help but wonder if people have become so disappointed in their fellow human beings that they would rather have a dog than a partner. I mean, I'm sure there's a certain amount of that, but I don't know. Like I said, maybe I'm just an old fuddy duddy Pollyanna thinking guy that is naive and out of touch. But I don't know.
no,
I,
but wait a
I
second. They're reacting. People are
A lot
reacting.
of people are reacting,
People
yes.
are reacting today,
Hmm.
given the circumstances today.
Hmm.
If you were you today, like a teenager, the input that you would be receiving
Oh yeah, I mean,
would be a different story. And from that input given to you,
mm,
you would necessarily arrive at least some different conclusions than you did when you were coming up,
oh yeah, no doubt.
according to the lay of the land. So these kids are just react. I mean, because they're human, they have two arms, two legs, roughly.
Sure.
They have a brain. They have everything that we had in our respective eras, but the conditions are slightly different. And so they're reacting. I mean, education wise, what's on
That,
TV, just all
well,
these things are.
we've always done that. We've always reacted because we are products of, we are the sum of our experiences, and we have always reacted.
Yeah.
You know, the pressures are different. They come quicker, and more people know about them instantly. Sometimes it's self-inflicted wounds. Other times it's completely out of our control. But I think that's what we're seeing is we're seeing I'm seeing it as a coping mechanism, and what I'm talking about is so many more people having pets nowadays.
Mhm.
I think it's a coping mechanism, and I think it's coping with loneliness. Simply put, because we go out of our way to avoid interacting with people. But because we're social creatures, we have to have some form of interaction. Now, I just got finished telling you that I'm that one guy at a crowded party that when I don't know hardly anybody, I'm in the corner playing with the dog. I'm guilty of that. Been doing it all my life. I'm a gregarious guy. I can strike up a conversation with anybody, but I don't do well in big crowds where I don't know people.
No,
You
because
know?
doing well in big crowds is kind of a difficult one because there's just too many people and you're just one person. Unless you're giving a speech, but I get that. I think
Yeah,
that that's
yeah. You put me up on stage, I'm fine. You put me in front of a podium or in front of a microphone, I can address a large crowd of people. I've done it. I mean, it's no big deal. But where I don't know, it just feels like the room gets gigantic and there's all these people. It's just too much all at once. And I just kind of stand back and watch. And if there's a critter, I'll play with the critter because I still want that interaction. I don't know you. I don't know you. I don't know you. What are we going to do? Stand around and talk about the weather? That's boring as hell.
so.
I'd
You're not
rather
a nightingale. You're not a trip the lights. You're not
no,
a get in the crowd and
no.
mingle.
I've never have been that kind of person.
I don't
Now,
like that
if
either.
I'm making my way over to grab a soda out of the fridge and I bump into four people and hi, how you doing? Hi, how you doing? I'll small talk my way over, grab my drink and come back. I mean, I'm fine doing that. But I can't get into some deep meaningful conversation with somebody that I don't know. You know, I can
No,
address a big crowd of people, but I don't do good one on one with people I don't know.
no. But and it's not expected.
Hmm.
I was at my cousin's wedding, and my aunt, her mother, my cousin's mom, and my aunt had a friend from back in the day that they live out west now, and have done for decades. And they came for the wedding,
Hmm.
and it's just like you're saying, it's a wedding, so there's plenty. So
Yeah.
after the fact, during the party, everybody's mingling and this and that, and I got to talking with my aunt's friend, and more so with her husband that I met.
Hmm.
And he really started getting into to it, talking and asking me questions and this and that. And it turns out that he was a psychologist.
Hmm.
So that's his normal. He's naturally curious about people,
Hmm.
and so he gets into it. And I replied back to him like that because I enjoy deeper conversations. And so we're there at the party talking deeper conversations, but there was a limit. We're not going to bust out the documentation and this and that. And
Yeah.
this, but we talked, and I'm not trying to put myself in the level of a psych. What I'm saying is that I'm open to that.
Well, yeah.
This is a professional, so I'm trying to clarify the one. He's a professional, and he goes there's that eager to expand on things, and so we did a little bit more than the usual, but in general, it's topical conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Because what else are you gonna do?
Yeah. Yeah. If somebody wants to engage with me, I'm more than happy to talk to them, but I've got no idea what the hell to say to somebody I don't know. You know.
I mean,
So
you don't.
I'm not going to initiate any discussion, but if somebody comes up and starts saying, "Wow, what do you think of this thing that he built over here?" Yeah, that's pretty cool. We can get into it and we can discuss, and maybe we might even become friends over this whole thing as time trundles merrily on during the evening. But I'm not the kind that can approach somebody and just start a conversation. Now, if I'm standing next to you in a checkout line and we see somebody drop the tomatoes, it's like, uh-oh, yeah, I'll talk to you about it. I might say a few things, but then we go back to our own little thing. I'm in my world, you're in yours. But
Yeah, I mean, you can't expect, and you don't know if you say something that's a little bit. You set a limit of what's normal talk.
mhm,
We all do.
yeah,
I'm saying that because I do that. Maybe we all don't, but it looks like that most people keep it at a certain level wherever that might be, at
yeah,
a very basic level when an interaction with a stranger occurs, because you don't know what that person's about.
no, you don't.
You don't know what's going on in their brain.
Mhm.
um, they may be capable of busting out some heavy duty stuff, but that's not the appropriate scenario. There's a process of getting to know people and such. Um, so it's it's natural.
Yeah.
I think. I
I,
think
it,
that's natural.
yeah, I think you're right about that. But some people are real outgoing. I'm not an introvert, but I'm not that much of an extrovert to where I'll, dive into a sea of people and ta-da! It's all a game of dig me. Here we go. Now,
Like
if I'm on stage or behind a podium or in front of a microphone, the worst thing they could do, I was a casino manager. The worst thing they did was they handed me a microphone, a cordless microphone that was hooked to the PA system throughout the entire casino. That's the worst thing they could have done because I will use it for the dumbest reasons because I just have an absolute blast doing that kind of thing. But I'm also amongst a big old group of people who are regulars. I've gotten to know personalities. I've gotten to know this guy is married to this woman over here. I can make a joke about him to her and she will laugh her tail off. You know, I can make a joke with this guy about his brother over there and I can make a joke with his brother about this guy back over here and they're going to have an absolute blast. My whole thing, it was an act. It was my shtick. My whole thing was to get people happy, keep them happy, entertain them so they'll keep putting money in those slot machines. That was my entire mission. But I had an absolute ball doing it. But if I was to stand next to one of them at some party or something like that, I might be able to say a few things to them. But other than that, I really don't know anything other than what they've told me about themselves. You
so
know,
one of the problems. Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, that was it. I was kind of done.
One of the problems with communication with people,
Hmm.
from my vantage point, is that there is that fine line. Well, number one, when you communicate with someone for the first time,
Hmm.
it could be the barber that I went to, it could be the guy at the auto parts store, it could be anybody, whatever, the lady.
Yeah.
In fact, that's a good example. The lady, according to her replies,
Hmm.
was letting me know, whether consciously or it was natural, whatever the hell, that she was a willing participant in further conversation.
Yeah.
She, according to my understanding of communication, which
Sure.
we've been doing for better or worse all our lives, pointed to a person that wanted to share.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but there's many factors. But other people keep it very, very simple. Not that she went all sorts of, but she opened doors
Mm-hmm.
in subtle ways. But many people are very in those interactions, and the problem is that I was going to get. You have something to say? Go ahead.
No. I'm listening. Because I'm interested in where
the
you're going.
The problem is that from my vantage point, and it could be your vantage point, I think there's a little bit of truth to it for everybody. When you interact with someone you don't know,
Mm-hmm.
number one, whatever you might say might be held against you. You
Well,
know,
a lot of that is situational, but yeah, you got to be careful. Yeah.
yeah. So there's a lot of touchy things
Mm-hmm.
that could go wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and so in order to avoid that, people keep it as simple as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so you don't want to risk it with an absolute stranger many times.
No.
And it's just not an appropriate time. So you have to
Yeah,
really,
you got to read the room. Yeah, you got to know your audience before you. Yeah.
well, yeah, you have to read the room because you
Mm-hmm.
can't. Number one, you can't expect,
Mm-hmm.
like we've talked often, that whatever the heck you're interested in as a
Mm-hmm.
person, that the or what you accept as a reality
Mm-hmm.
over any number of things,
Uh-huh.
or as a far gone conclusion, the other person might not have considered that, or their opinion on that whatever simple thing might be completely freaking alien to you.
Well, and that's why you got to be careful. You got to read the room before you open your mouth. Because
Yeah,
it's real easy to open your mouth and stick your foot in it.
and we also don't know who people are.
No, we don't. I mean, what can you say?
We really don't know. You really don't know. Just because I told you before, and I think this is so eye opening. A kid or a guy, young guy, went and did some interviews on the street,
Mm-hmm.
and he showed two photos. One of a handsome looking guy,
Mm-hmm.
various handsome looking guys, and right parallel to that handsome looking various guys, this really not too good looking human being guy, various ones, and they asked, who would you trust more?
Mm-hmm.
And according to the people, they all went with the
The
great looking
clean cut.
person,
Yeah.
clean cut. And guess what? Each one of those clean cuts were freaking axe murderers, dude.
Yeah.
And what does that tell you? That okay,
Well,
well, no, let me.
we saw that on display with the Menendez brothers trial.
Okay, yeah, was that in the 2000s at some point? Early
I
2000s?
want to say it was in the 90s. It may have been the late 80s, but I think it was in the 90s. Where I mean,
But so,
go ahead.
well, no, okay, so I just want to say that the appearance,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
which is the easiest thing on the eyes,
Mm-hmm.
opens the door
Yeah.
for these people that were being interviewed on the street to say, "Oh yeah, this great-looking person here is obviously is a good guy, and the other guy's got to be a scumbag." Oh, and by the way, those parallel nice-looking guy and not so nice-looking guy images, the nice guy again were axe murderers, and the not so nice-looking guys
Mm-hmm.
were people that did freaking like humanitarian. They went around the world. They did
Mm-hmm.
all sorts. Like they were. What does that tell you about people, dude?
It's that we're superficials. We're very superficial.
Yeah, it tells you that the judgment
Mm-hmm.
of people, at least with the people sampled, but I am confident enough to say, biased, but I'm confident to say that I don't think it's isolated.
Oh no, it definitely isn't. It's definitely not isolated.
The Menendez was 1996.
Yeah. Thank
Um,
you, Linda.
Thank you, Linda. We just corrected the timeline one more time.
Yeah.
One more time.
Well, that's what
So
happens when we get into these discussions, and I haven't done any prep at all because I don't know. I don't remember half of this stuff.
so so it also tells me that all sorts of judgment calls
Mhm.
are made on appearances, but that's not the only one. They're also made according to gender.
Sure.
They're also made according to, dare I say it, skin color. They're also made according to, dare I say it, weight. They're also made, hell, height, you name it, long hair, beards, no beards, this and that. There's a whole
Hmm.
plethora
But
of, well, let me finish the thought. There's a whole plethora of categories which people look at and make quick judgment calls on. But the problem is, do they question? Obviously, red flags, you're going to be careful. But but it's, is it sufficient? Well, it's sufficient to keep your butt alive, but apparently
yeah,
not, because these nice looking guys were the axe murderers.
yeah,
So it's like,
yeah. I mean, go down the list and look at them. Ted Bundy was a real nice looking guy. Jeffrey Dahmer was a real nice looking guy. John Wayne Gacy looked like the uncle, you know, your uncle Mike. I mean, it right down the list. It's the only thing I was going to add to that, but you added it for me, was that judgment is only human, because that judgment is what keeps you from picking up the guy wearing the hockey mask with the running chainsaw hitchhiking on the highway. But it's not always correct.
no, it's not. Not that it's not even
It's not
always.
always correct.
But
So,
it's not even that it's not always. You can see a fugly looking human being
hmm,
to say it, to say it one way or the other,
yeah.
and you may cast all your judgments on the person,
Hmm.
and the only ass in the joint is yourself.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. So,
You know, and it's like,
but
so
it's all part of being human. That's
okay,
100% all a part of being human.
okay, but with all those factors in play,
Hmm.
and people making the obvious, human judgments, as you're saying, which I guess not, I guess it's true.
Hmm.
Um, because it's easy. This pleasantly looking person, generally speaking, is going to be a good person.
Well, you hope anyway.
Yeah, and it's not freaking true. And the opposite is true in many cases. You can have a pleasant looking person,
Hmm.
male or female, by the way,
Hmm.
and the crap that's in their head,
Yeah.
the caca that's
Hmm.
swimming around in that reservoir of putrid stench, um, would confound and
Yeah.
scare, even rats away. So, you know since we have that dilemma that we don't know the universe inside the skull of a person, um, just by their externalities, you could pretty much go with the externalities and completely ruin. Like, you get into a situation with a person, and they lead you down that road, um, and then you're in a problem. People are dangerous, dude. People are dangerous.
Yeah. People, I'll say people can be dangerous, is all I'll say. Now, this is another example, and I think that lady with the scale was a maybe an exception to help me kind of prove the point that you come at this from a different angle than I do, because you have lived big city most of your life. And I know that Sweetwater geographically is not very big, but you're part of a huge metropolitan area.
Hmm.
And there are millions of people vying for the same space that you're standing in right now. There are millions of people that want to be where you're standing right this very instant, whether that be at Publix or just walking down the sidewalk. So when you're, and I've lived in big cities too, when you're in a big city like that, you have to keep your guard up. because you're absolutely right. There are vultures out there everywhere. There are evil intended people out there daily, and you don't know who you're going to bump into. So you have to keep your guard up and you have to keep your head on a swivel and watch. Situational awareness has to be
Sure,
foremost in your mind.
that's true.
Now, I'm out here in a small town. Hell, we don't even have sidewalks to roll up at night, let alone rolling up the sidewalks at night. I'm here in a small town. We're all pretty spread out. There's 8,000 people, but they cover a huge number of square miles. A lot of this is still open pasture land. So we're not so crowded in on one another. We have room to breathe. We live right off of the main highway that goes through town. So we're in probably one of the more densely populated areas, but still, there may be 1,000 people within 5 mile circle of me.
By
Maybe.
numbers alone, you're more safe.
So,
By percentages alone, you're more safe.
yeah, just because there are fewer people out here. So we don't have those defenses up. And I think maybe just due to the fact that that woman, much like yourself, are so used to people coming and going and passing and never even acknowledging one another, that when you walked up and you tried to do something nice and tell her, yeah, that's been broken for the last few weeks, it was refreshing. It was different. Now, she could have very well said, oh, and just walked off. But that sound, just from my opinion, sounds to me like her personality was, thank God, somebody that wants to talk.
Yeah, something like that.
I think there is a hunger for that in people of your age and up, your age into my age and older than me, because so many people do just pass by each other. I pass by people all the time out here in this little bitty town, never say a word to them. But if we're both standing at Taco Bell and somebody in the kitchen drops something, I have no problem looking over going, I don't think that's what they meant when they said drop the chalupa. I'll make a stupid joke. I'm fine doing that. Whether he wants to laugh, look at me, and take 2 steps to the side to get away from me, I gives a damn. You know, I don't have that much of a guard up. I can be more relaxed, I guess, is what I'm saying. So, you know, it's just part of it, I think, is the hunger for interaction that we don't want to admit to. And so we don't have an outlet, so we get pets.
I mean, I guess yes. I don't. So yeah. Well, I
That
could
was a
say.
lot to unpack. I know. I just
Well,
dropped.
no, I
I
could
just
say a
dropped the
lot.
load on you.
No, I could say a lot because we need interaction as human beings. Apparently, that's a thing. Because we do it, and there's no apparent other than the fact that there's um, um, an exchange of what's going on in the internal universe and sharing it outwardly and getting feedback and all that. I mean, there's something to that. Um, but well, actually, let's forget that. Let me go back to you said in a city like this, there's you don't know who's good or bad, and you have to keep your guard up and this and that. And I thought something like raced by that I wanted to mention when we this is kind of but when we watch a movie, um, it might be the case that we cheer for the protagonist. It might be the case.
Mm-hmm.
Some people might secretly cheer for the antagonist, the enemy,
Oh
the
yeah.
bad guy.
Oh
That might
yeah.
be a thing too. Um, so we in this scenario of watching a movie are the observer, and it's not unlike who we actually are right now, like you, Mark Lindsay, walking about
Mhm.
doing your thing all day. You're actually the observer. You can interact with the universe around you, but you're the observer. Um, and you can have preferences, and you do, and I do.
Oh yeah.
But going back to the movie scenario, which is I just gave the parallel that it's kind of there's parallel because you're the observer,
Hmm.
you're in that seat. But you might watch and the protagonist, and you might cheer for the protagonist. But or not the problem, but the interesting thing is that when we watch a movie, we are collecting all the information not only from the protagonist as it's going on, but we're collecting the information from the bad guys
Hmm.
and the non-essential characters that just give a hint so that the storyline moves forward. We are observing the whole package, the whole story, and all the different incentives that each character has to the degree that they do. So even though we may prefer the protagonist, um, we're also involved in the lives of all the characters in there. So we're
Right.
learning about the good guy, we're learning about the bad guy, the henchmen, the supporting members, the people that fly by. We're learning about this whole collective of characters in this plot of this movie. Um, and so I'll wrap it up with this. This is something that Jordan Peterson brought forward, and again, I will just say I have issues with Jordan Peterson greatly in certain aspects, and in others, none at all. It's real life.
Hmm.
Some of it I like and I agree with. Others I'm like, no, that's you're
Yeah.
off the. Who am I to say? But I'm just saying. He said that a lot of people, when they're confronted with a scenario, and they're saying, "Oh well, if I were in World War II Germany, I would have been the person that helped those people escape, even though I would have been in the military at the time in the German military. I wouldn't have gone with that because it's an absolutely obviously evil what they did,
Hmm.
and me, I know my balance and my measure, and I would not do that. And so my position is that I would be the person to help." And Jordan Peterson emphasizes the thing that you don't know that, but he goes a step further. And just like the movie, that the scenario that I explained, that we're viewing all the characters, we're actually all the characters.
Yeah.
The person that says that, "Oh, I'd be the good guy," maybe he or she would be, but that's not the case. That's not the totality. The fact is that we are not only the good guys, we're also the bad guys, we're also the passerbyers, we're also the non-essential characters, we're also the supporting cast, we're also the lighting crew. This idea that we are good and we are bad is contingent, always contingent, on the scenario in which we are forced to choose. And that concept, or at least dealing with that, or allowing that thought
Hmm.
to occur, is a humbling thing. Yes, there's a sliding scale. So anyway, so when you're walking around, any person you interact with, even that wonderful looking lady by the
Hmm.
scale, you know, she has all the potential, from the extreme good
Hmm.
to the other bad. Now it might be true that
We all do.
we all do, so it
We
may
all
not be
have that
that she,
potential. Yes.
yeah, it may not be, but the potential is there. And I'm saying that when I interact with people, like I have no, I'm going to be bold and use you, but you applies to me.
Hmm.
Like, this is not controversial within what we're talking about, but I have no doubt that, according to what I know of you, not being in your headspace, that you would opt, generally speaking, for the nicer way out or the nicer conclusion,
Sure.
because that's what I've seen from you.
Hmm.
But I have no doubt that in the right circumstance, since you're a human being, since you're a human being, that everything applies, because
Yeah.
we're human being. Not that you would choose that,
No, no,
willy-nilly.
you're absolutely right. But I mean, because we're human, everything is still on the table.
Right. If you were back in the Bronze Age, and you were in Switzerland, up in the, they didn't call it Switzerland there, but you're up in
Hmm.
those freaking mountains, and you're chasing down Utsi
Hmm.
because he did whatever we don't even know, but they say
Yeah.
that he was being chased, and you're chasing him down. Even though today we look at Utsi and we're thinking, man, that he's given us so much knowledge, and he must have been a good guy, because I look at Utsi and his story, like, man, that could have been me up on the mountain. But I have no doubt that if you place us in the circumstance of the guys chasing him, what would we do? We'd probably, under those if you're a Roman
Oh,
guard, what would you do in a situation that a village needs to be burnt? If you're some guy in like middle age England, and you have to, just all the different variations, we don't know what we would do. So it's
well,
arrogant, arrogant, arrogant for a position to be taken that some people take. That
mhm,
they, I hate to do this, but I'm going to do it because I'm so, to look at the past and do judgment calls as if these people had the available knowledge that we have now and circumstances.
yeah,
It just, this is not right.
yeah, and customs and mores and morals change. They're always fluid. And back on the subject of Utsi, who's to say that he was the good guy? Who's
How
to say
dare
that
you?
he wasn't the bad guy that was being chased? Who's to say he wasn't the one who started burning down houses?
See, now I don't want that. I don't like that theory, because I'm kind of what do you call it, partial to the Utsi thing. But yeah, you're right though. You're
But
right.
yeah, we don't know the circumstance. We know the end result, but we don't know why he was being chased. Was he the good guy, the innocent guy, or was he the bad guy? Had he perpetrated some crime? Did he kill somebody? You know, and was being chased down? We just don't know. We have no clue.
Was he walking to Publix?
Yeah, really.
And we don't know.
That's it. Did he get off on the wrong bus stop? I mean,
Did he wrongly say something about Cubans to the manager, and got an arrow stuck in his back for it?
yeah. Well, I
Um,
mean,
we don't know.
exactly. So it's I don't know, but that's all part of being human. Um,
Yeah.
we make judgments every day. Some of them right, some of them wrong, and all we can do is live with the result of that judgment. That's all we can do.
Learn from it.
Yeah, hopefully, if there is something to be learned. I mean, if I decide I'm not waiting on this red light, I'm going to turn right at this corner, I may go 3 blocks down and have an accident. Then again, I may decide not to make that right turn and sit at that red light for another 2.5 hours because traffic is backed up because there's an accident up ahead. I mean, all we can do is make our best judgment, take action, and then deal with the results of that judgment, that decision. You know,
Or ignore
we're
it.
powerless to do anything about it.
Or ignore it. I mean, the older I get, I reflect on, because I do look at, in order to make it reasonable, you have forks in the road as you go along life.
Mhm.
And if I think back on certain scenarios, the problem that I find, which is a reverse of what I was mentioning about people judging people in the past,
Mhm.
like I could recognize that, you know, I don't know, Romans, which we come from, by the way, but Romans back then burning down a village, those people in the villages we also come from. That's the funny thing. But knowing that you saw, but I can see how I can look back and say, man, that was messed up, and they were the bad guys, these were the good guys. I could do that, but that's within the context of that's then, and you can't really transpose that so you can't do that. But I look at scenarios in the past, and the older you get, you start to see them laid out,
Mhm.
and I start making judgment calls and saying, man, I did a stupid thing here, and I did a stupid thing there, and I should have known better, and many times I did, but I opted for the stupid road.
Mhm.
Um, but at the time, I wasn't thinking it was a stupid road many times. And what I'm doing is judging my now me or my then me with my now me.
I do that a
And
lot.
and but the two people are the same in the timeline, but they're different because of the um experience exposure.
Well, not only that, but levels of maturity. I mean, I've heard it said that men don't hit their full maturity until their early 40s. I
Until
don't
their 80s.
I don't remember where I heard that, but I've seen, been my experience with my grandparents and my uncles and things like that, that that's the main difference between girls and boys is little girls grow up to be women and little boys grow up to be older little boys. We still want our toys, we still want to play, we still want to be entertained. It's just the price of admission has gone up over the years, you know. We still haven't gotten rid of that little boy thing. And if you don't think that's true, watch a grandparent, watch a grandparent, parent, I did it again, play with a grandson. Watch a grandpa play with a grandson, and
Yeah,
you'll see that little boy come out of a 60 or 70-year-old man
yeah.
like that.
But I will say though that yes, there's something to be said about this maturity thing, and there is a big difference. I agree with you. But let me. There's something about nature.
Mhm.
There's a reason why men are how men are.
Oh, yeah.
There's a reason.
Lots of reasons.
There's an innate embedded. Now, people can argue that
Uh,
it's a cultural thing, and like they say, the machismo thing, and this and that. Well, I'm sorry. I agree. We're not. I mean, let to our own devices, we'd be walking around with I don't know leopard skin loincloth on,
mhm.
and like stabbing river monkeys and whatever. Um, Picture that in your minds. Um,
I don't need to. I've seen that Ted Nugent album cover too.
um, but there's a reason for that. Not you and I personally,
Mhm.
individually, but our ancestors spent millennia
Mhm. Doing just that. Yeah.
doing these things, and these things, however, I mean, there's no DNA study that I know of that has studied said thing, but it's got to be there. Maybe not, but we've spent a millennia going out and butchering half of everything in sight in
Mhm.
order to defend a cave, a home site, a village.
Or to
uh,
adapt the environment to our way of living.
exactly. And so um you know you can't refine a man into a diamond if there's no diamond to refine there. You can dress a monkey up in fine suit, in a fine
Mhm.
suit and tail or whatever. But there is a little bit. There's self control, but men are men because they're men.
Yeah, and women are women because they're women, and that's
Exactly.
and that's the way it's supposed to be. That's the way it's supposed to be. We're not supposed to be the same. Even you can't even say men are the same. You and I are completely different people, and that's the way it's supposed to be. You know, lumps, bruises, faults, gray hair, and all.
Yeah,
That's
but
the
we
way
know
it's supposed
something.
to
But
be.
but you know something, and I know something.
Hmm.
Even though we're living in advanced societies or
Hmm.
contemporary society, whatever the heck. Actually, I think we're living in idiocracy, but whatever. But we're living in this world where certain things no longer apply, and so that applied for 100, 200,
Well,
300,
sure.
1,000 years,
And certain
and
things that apply today are not going to apply in 10 years from now. So,
so what I'm getting at is that we still have the residuals of that. It's
mhm,
seen,
sure.
it's baked in. So you and I both know. Um,
And a
if
lot of
you
that's
if
never going to go away.
if you tell no, it's never going to go away. If you tell me we're in this situation and we need to hunt,
Hmm.
I'm just giving you a wild thing, but given the circumstance, you and I would set the situation in motion
Hmm.
to take down a mountain lion or whatever the heck
Hmm.
in order to secure whatever the heck.
In
We may
order
not
to survive, yeah.
but there's something innate in you that, do you have any doubt in you, even if you die trying, let's
No,
say?
no,
I don't have any doubt in
seriously.
me.
All you have to do is look at what the two of the biggest forms of recreation are in this country: fishing and hunting. Both of them survival skills that we have been practicing since the development of fire and probably before that. So the ability to gather food is primal. I mean, that's in our DNA. The ability to feed yourself, and
Now,
that's one of the basic things that's a part of what makes us what we are.
and I'm not trying to. So, like, one could easily argue, oh well, everything that I just said is a bunch of horse
Mhm.
manure. Um, because hey, I mean, we're here now and this and that.
We're
It is
civilized and we
true.
can go buy meat. We don't have to go hunt it. No, we don't have to, but that's why I called it a form of recreation. Some people like to do it.
Well,
But
yeah, it's true. Also, parallel to that instinct that for the last who knows how long, it's
mm,
been a long time. There have been city states and countries that created laws and rules and contractual limits and things that you were not allowed. And there's been a refinement
mhm,
so that more people can get along in a mutual way as best as possible. But you have people that cut corners, and you have people. Um, so I'm not trying to throw out, the fact that we have a certain self control is a thing. I'm just saying that there's and the chemicals that run in our bodies and as
sure,
guys do something.
sure, sure. I mean,
You know,
that's undeniable. That's just an incontrovertible fact.
yeah,
So
that's different than being like doing the wrong thing in the wrong situation. But
sure,
it's bound to. I mean, most people in jail are men.
yeah,
Most people that
definitely.
according to what I've seen out there, I mean, I could sit and review, but it seems to be. I've also read that most people that commit the
Hmm.
are men.
Yeah. Um,
Um,
last statistic I saw was something along the lines of only 11% of the violent crime committed in this country are committed by women. So, yeah, I mean, women are less physical, women are less confrontational in general. There's always exceptions. There's always exceptions. But women resort to violence at a much lower rate than men do.
but they have more cunning in the ways of they can hold their own in, I mean, in the pure physical, that's another
Oh,
thing, but
sure. But
in the ability to they have their ability, and it's
what,
not to be looked down, and some can kick a guy's ass left
well, yeah, like I said, there's exceptions to every rule. But when you get two or three men together who don't know each other, we know deep inside, we know no matter how nice, no matter how decent, no matter what the topic of the conversation is, we're all just standing around waiting for our wives in the fitting rooms.
we might have to take
We,
this one down.
we don't know each other,
Yeah,
but we know as men there is a potential for violence
yeah,
and we act accordingly.
yeah, that is
Women
absolutely true.
women don't do that. They
We're
don't
talking in
think
generality, in broad,
we're
right?
talking in generalities,
Yeah,
yes. But there are a bunch of generalities that some might say are bad things. Oh, you're just being a misogynist. No, it's borne out with data. Generally speaking, overall, in general, men prefer to work with and work on things. And women prefer to work with people, generally speaking. That's why you see more men mechanics, bricklayers, heavy equipment operators, things of that nature, electricians, HVAC, plumbing, carpenters. You do see women in some of those lines of work as well, but not even close to the same proportion as you see men. Women tend to be doctors, nurses, psychiatrists, attorneys, lawyers, teachers. They work with people, social workers, things
Judges.
of that judges, things of that nature. They work with people. The medical profession is dominated by women, dominated. But there are, proportionally speaking, fewer female surgeons. Not because, yeah, and she is right. 22 years Army. She's trained. Uh, she has stacked up on a door and breached a room. Yes. Um, it's not because women can't be surgeons, it's because most women don't want to be surgeons. They want to be specialists, they want to be radiologists, they want to be family practitioners. It makes perfect sense that they would be gynecologists because women would be more comfortable going to another woman for that, just as a man would be more comfortable going to another man as for a urology appointment. They tend to specialize in things of that nature: ear, nose, and throat, ophthalmologists, pharmacists. You know, we're talking highly trained specialists, doctors. They tend not to be surgeons because a surgeon has to make a disconnect that this is not a person. This is a broken thing I have to fix. I'm not taking a scalpel and cutting into a person's skin and then sawing through their ribs to open him up. I'm gaining access to his heart so I can fix the broken thing. There has to be that disconnect. And I'm not saying it's easy to do. What I'm saying is just the data shows it's easier for men to do than it is for women to do. Most women don't want to be surgeons. There are some that are brilliant surgeons. They just, most don't want to be.
They also say that many of them have psychopathic leanings.
Yes. And that's that ability to disconnect. You're not hurting a person, you're fixing the broken thing. It's that disconnect. You have to remove their humanity in order to get in and fix what's broken.
Yeah, you have to be a unique individual to do that day in day out because frankly,
Yeah.
um, I mean, I can't even see. I mean, yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
It's
I'm not that guy either. I am not that guy either.
it's just too. But now I wanna mention that another little clip that I saw, which goes to what we've been talking about right now, was they went on the street again
Mhm.
and they interviewed a bunch of women. Obviously, this is anecdotal to that
Sure.
video, but you tell me. They interviewed a bunch of women and then they interviewed a bunch of guys.
Hmm.
The video's out there, you can see, but this is what happened. The question on the table was for the women, do we even need men? And the
Uh,
question for and the question for the men was, gentlemen, do we even need women? And all the women interviewed, maybe they set it up for the thing, but it was sure a lot of people, women, when asked the question, nah, we don't need them. This, and that. We don't need it. Back
yeah,
to back.
I've seen those.
Nah, nah. And then when they asked the men, they were, of course, they make life worth living. They make everything you could imagine. Now that
Yeah.
does not mean that that's sample reflects the population at large, but it's disturbing, especially if you're a guy. But it should be disturbing if you're a woman too.
It's I'm not surprised. Let me just say that.
That's an answer as to why people, what's the communication problem. That's
Uh-huh.
one possible answer.
Well,
There's a
but
disproportionate imbalance in the worth or value of the other sex.
I have several theories on that. Thank you. I have several theories on that. I wonder how much of that is pure unadulterated BS because, hey, look at me, I'm on camera. I'm either going to say something real cute or I'm on camera. I need to say the right thing.
That's still
Yeah,
problematic, Mark. You know why?
it is. It is
Because,
problematic.
but you know why it's problematic. So let's say
Mhm.
so this is the they really don't feel that way. They're just putting up a show.
Mhm.
Okay, but that still speaks to something in the
I think
culture.
I think that I have to put on a show. Yeah.
That speaks to something that it still is pointing to a devaluation of the one sex.
Uh-huh.
Um, so now you could argue that there's a lot of chauvinists for real,
Oh,
and
there are.
this is just a video, but this just speaks to what you were saying in terms of the communication thing, and this, if you don't, if you have little value placed in someone,
Mhm.
chances are you're not going to interact with them anyhow. So this goes to that we were speaking of in the beginning, a little bit somewhere in there.
Well,
I
it,
think that
I think it does more than you think because to kind of piggyback off of what you're saying, if you don't put any value on that person, how do you expect that person to place any value on you? You know, I've seen a lot of one-way relationships where one of them is doing all of the heavy lifting, doing all of the work, and the other just doesn't seem to give a sniff.
yeah.
And that's just wrong. That's just wrong. Everybody has value, you know? So I think a lot of people have kind of given up on society because of that perception that you're talking about here. Well, if we don't value this group, we can just ignore them. We can also conveniently ignore them, all of the things that they do. No, we don't need no man. Really? I don't see you driving a garbage truck. Who are you going to call when your air conditioner or your refrigerator breaks down? You know, your toilet's plugged. Handle it. Because most of the people in those occupations are men. And oh, we don't need no women. Oh, really? Better hope you don't get sick. Better hope you don't need an attorney.
Well, it's a
You
vicious
know,
cycle. It's a vicious cycle because guess what? This can be looked at. I looked at it at one point, but I haven't since. But it reminds me, population not being replaced sufficiently. So where are you going to get those doctors? Where are you going to get even so? At some point, I mean, most people would probably say, "Ah, it'll fix itself," and we don't have to deal with that problem per se, um, because it's a big generational problem. It's not a here to tomorrow problem. You see
right?
plenty of people out and about.
Well,
So you're like, we're full of people. There's no problem, but we are kind of seeing it locally here. Not as many kids, and if
mhm.
you drag that forward generationally, that's a problem.
I think it comes back down to interaction. If you look at, I mean, God knows I'm not involved in dating culture at all. But if you look and just listen to the people who are, dude, if you and I were a part of the people looking for dates now, the way you and I used to get a date, it's just that doesn't exist anymore.
It was easy as just
Well,
talk.
it was on us to do the talking. And you see it all day long. It was so remarkable to you that that woman would even have a conversation with you.
No, it was of note. It's not that it
That's
was
what I mean.
It
Uh,
wasn't
th-
that it was remarkable.
Well, it was
Uh,
worth remarking on, is what I mean by remarkable. I
yeah,
mean, I didn't mean miraculous, but the fact that it was worth taking note of says
yeah.
how rare it is because people don't want to interact anymore. So, how they're meeting one another these days, I guess online, I really don't know. But it, it, it's no wonder the birth rates are going down. I saw one statistic, it's been a few months back. It's estimated that 50% of women will reach age 45 single and have no kids.
Wow.
And that's simply because the a lot of it is self-imposed, the pressure they put on themselves. I want to have a career, I want to do this, I want to do that. And by the time they figure out, no, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore, I want to have a family, a lot of them are finding out that it may be too late.
Well, yeah. There's a time limit for that,
Exactly.
like
their
everything
their
else.
their clock ticks, whereas ours just kind of, you know, the,
Meanders.
the spring winds down. you know so I mean, they're putting a lot of pressure on themselves. We're putting a lot of pressure on them. I'm talking about the older generations. You got to go to college, you got to do this, you got to do that. It's no wonder, it's no wonder that they are, that the birth rates are going down, that there aren't as many kids out there because people are too focused on job and career. Some will argue that you can't afford to have kids today. I won't say that's wrong. I will never say that that is wrong. It's more expensive to have kids today than it was when I was having my kids. A lot more expensive. And that's a huge, huge financial um, proposition you're talking about. So I can kind of understand it.
The conditions are not set, and I'm talking about countrywide, culturally, economic wise,
Mhm.
um, social interaction wise, conceptually. Everything today in today's world is set up. I'll say it boldly, for the sacking and burning of Rome. If you look
Man.
at those, if you look at the, you may if you like, but this is just shy a decade. I forget the number. The replacement thing, numbers
Hmm.
started ticking the other way around.
Yep.
That's not to say in some future time, in the near future, that things will change. But as it stands right now, if you look at all the categories, as upsetting as it would be for many, um, there's one thing called reality, and there's the other thing called I'm living in a matrix paradigm, and I'm going to believe
Sure.
whatever the heck I want.
Sure.
And most people, I would assume, would opt to, and we all do it,
Hmm.
is to fool ourselves that things are, oh, it's sort of normal. Yeah, that's messed up. No, if you take everything and you put everything on the
Yeah.
table, it's a freaking big dumpster fire of a mess.
Well,
And the conditions for the structure that you and I understand,
hmm,
coming from generations back, of a nucleus of a family, it's one thing in a 1980s scenario, in a 1970s scenario, even back in the day, there were struggles, savage ones. Um, but today, compared to medieval times,
hmm,
if you can do comparisons, and there's plenty of them, and you can make arguments, but like I say, in the medieval times, people died a lot, kids,
yeah,
mothers at birth. But like we've talked about, they had their farms or they worked whatever. and they had plenty of kids, and those kids worked the fields, and there was this and that. Some went off to military, and there was this. They had their thing. They didn't have the information run amok like we have now. We have a constant barrage of negativity, plus that negativity or that barrage of information also allows us to explore potential threats or um, people are aware that things are screwed up
Mm-hmm.
in the ways that are important to them as individuals.
Right.
Somebody might think that it's important to, I don't know, the illegal immigration thing to be controversial, and they're focused on that terrible thing. Another person might be focused on, well, it's this politician or that law or this law or the court or the this. There's all these things, and everybody's got it immediately,
Mm-hmm.
instantaneously on the thing. And all those things may be true at the same time, probably is, but there's not a dang thing, in broadly speaking, that an individual can do about it. But the stressors involved create the conditions that we now see ourselves in.
And what's the common theme amongst all of that is the devaluation of people, of human beings. It's and that's what I was talking about. Well, we don't need this group. We don't need that group. And we can live without this group. All in all, everything that you just mentioned devalues people. When we start valuing one another again, and there was never a perfect time, there
No,
was never the glory days,
no,
but when we start valuing one another again, things will change. But as long as we allow these wedges to be driven between us, we can afford the we can afford to, and the easier it becomes to devalue. The minute we can drive a wedge and put all the older people over here, okay, boomer. And the minute we can devalue all the women and put them over there, okay, Karen, it becomes so much easier to just ignore one another. And it becomes easier to splinter us up into other groups. You're a Seahawks fan. Bye. You're one of those baseball people. Bye. The next thing you know, you're sitting here with a group of two or three people complaining because you can't get a date. Well, you just alienated 99% of the people that around you who would want to date you. We got to start valuing people again. We got to stop allowing others to drive wedges between us because number one, it's profitable for them and it's disastrous for us. Number two.
the thing is that the them, the media, people of interest over a product, the them, in a strange way, hard to say, because I point my finger at the them. We're the them in this way.
Go ahead.
If you take me and put me in their position and their set of problems that need to be solved for their position in their specific surroundings, and just like the American Psycho guy
Mm-hmm.
living in a high stress scenario, this and that, they acted according to the scenarios involved. The problem is that human beings have those issues,
Yeah.
and that if you take a Mark Lindsay from Mark Lindsay in Oregon to Mark Lindsay in the capital of Rome during the
Mm-hmm.
sacking by the
Mm-hmm.
by the people coming in from the north, the barbarians, Mark Lindsay would adjust for the circumstances of
Sure.
his time in that specific. And so, because of this, your suggestion which is a good suggestion to value people. Um, so many people that we do have, they're not going to take that suggestion.
Well, a lot of people are not going to take that suggestion, but it doesn't take a lot of people to take the suggestion. All it takes is the individual. I'm not out to try to change anybody's mind. I don't want everybody to think like me. I want everybody to think for themselves. And I can only control my own actions, and I can only control my own reactions. That's it. And the way I've chosen to do this is I don't partake. I've switched it off. I've turned it off. I don't listen to the pundits. I don't listen to the people trying to tell me that this is the most important issue we face in our lifetime. Bull. I've heard that my entire life. Every issue somebody has brought up about this is the most important issue of our time has been a crock of BS to either get somebody elected or make somebody else wealthy, or a combination of the two. So I don't partake. I don't care about those people. I don't listen to those people. I don't bury my head in the sand. I get my news from several sources, but I refuse to allow them to tell me that if I associate with you, somehow that makes me less of a person. Not because of anything you said, did, or even who you are, but because you're way over on the East Coast. I need to focus on the West Coast.
The pro-
BS.
the,
BS.
the problem. So your reasoning, which works in your, so
It works for
imagine.
me. It works for me.
Well, yeah, because but imagine if instead of Mark Lindsay, where you're at in your circumstance at this point in time, you were Mark Lindsay at a university somewhere in Pittsburgh or
Mhm.
whatever the circumstance you find yourself in. Mark Lindsay in that scenario would be exposed all around him, and maybe you're part of the club of the. It's just the problem is that because we're many
Mhm.
and everybody is situated in a different, they plot in different spots along the graph,
Mhm.
according to what they're doing as far as work or
Sure.
study, the people that are surrounding them at any given time. There's so many maybe they're in politics at this level, maybe they're gauging. It's just the thing, the problem, or maybe something in politics affects your specific job and you have to react to it, or coincident. I mean, the
I
problem.
understand that. I understand all that. But that's not what I'm referring to. I'm talking about people who are stirring up hatred for other people, for other groups. Yeah, there's always going to be somebody pounding on my door going, well, who are you going to vote for this year? Well, number one, it's none of your business. Number two, get the hell off my porch and don't bother coming back. I don't have time for these people. Nobody, elected or otherwise, has ever decided my happiness. And it took me 50 years to figure this out. Okay. This was not the way I've always been. What I'm talking about is the guy next door to me, either side, either neighbor, they have more value to me than anybody making decisions, who claiming to make decisions for me. I'm going to pay attention to them, and to hell with those other people. So I'm not going to allow them, these other people, to drive a wedge between me and my neighbors. They don't know me. They don't know my neighbors. They can go pound sand. I just won't partake. That's how I avoid that constant barrage that you're talking about. I've turned it off. I don't listen to them. I don't listen to them at all. They can preach to the wind for all I care, because it doesn't have a damn thing to do with me hanging over the fence talking to my next door neighbor. I know that when I leave, he's watching my yard, and he knows that when he leaves, I'm watching his yard. And
As
we get
long as
along
you're
fine.
as long as your neighbor has the same intentions.
Right. Understood. But that's my judgment call to make. It's not some outside force telling me that I gotta watch out for him because his name is spelt this way or has this ethnicity attached to it.
Yeah,
That's
I
my
mean,
judgment call to make.
but
That's
but the
nobody else's judgment call to make.
no, I understand it's yours. I'm just saying that, in reference to that we've got to, when you said that we've got to, which is it's the I found it, I find it correct. But when you suggest that we've got to, and you consider all these people that don't have the circumstances you have or that I have, the surrounding, I mean, just alone your surroundings and my surroundings are very different.
Yes, they are.
So I have to make different decisions, and so do you.
Understood.
And so this one thing that is a good idea in your circumstance, people cannot necessarily, or would not implement in their particular circumstances. and
And,
and that's why this harmony
mhm.
is tentative at best, en masse.
And I understand that. And again, I'm not trying to get anybody to think like me. I just wish people would think for themselves. That's all I wish for. You know, my grandson, I don't want him to think like me. I want him to think for himself. My daughters, I don't want them to think like me. I want them to think for themselves. And
Yeah,
that's it.
and that's a far con conclusion too, because each person is an independent, like, I mean,
Exactly.
but then again, you have a lot of influence on the people that you just mentioned, because whether you do so consciously or not, people, your offspring takes cues from you in ways that
Right.
would make, and if they looked if I'm sure, people know, I know, I know from my vantage point, because I constantly think to myself, oh yeah, that's what my dad or my mom would have thought, done, felt,
Uh huh.
thought, this and that.
Exactly.
So we can't escape that sort of
No,
legacy thing.
but that
But
only goes so far.
we're from a different generation.
Understood. And that's what I mean. That only goes so far. I can tell my grandson to think for himself, but I'm not doing his job. I'm not working with him on an 8-hour shift. I don't know what he's got going on in his daily life. I don't know how he gets to and from work. He's got his own concerns. What I'm talking about are the, let's just call it, say it like it is, the power brokers who have a vested interest in keeping us fighting with each other. Those are the people that I don't listen to. You know, I will decide what to think about my next door neighbor. If I like him, I like him. If I don't, I don't. But that's going to be my decision based on the information I have at hand. It's not going to be given to me by somebody else because they say that this group is bad. Pound sand, buckaroo.
I don't know how people that have a child or two or three or whatever, today's world, from my vantage point, because I know that I would have a huge problem allowing your child to go on a bus away from your observation and trusting a system that I grew up in, that I studied in, that I saw the problems in, that I saw the messed up problems in school. I could sit here for a
Well,
long time, and the damage, well no, but the conclusion of it, and the damage, potential damage, very real damage. Um it's just, and I know that people got to do it because you have to censor it. Like, I understand the logistics, but I'm just saying is that, man,
you don't trust. That's the short answer. You don't trust. And you verify.
yeah, but you're leaving them in the hands
Yeah.
of all sorts of people
Yeah.
for most of the day.
Absolutely.
What
And you
the
know what you do is you take them out. of that school.
Yeah, well, I'm saying that most people do that. When in that situation, they go to this place that it trains them to be, to believe or to
An
think.
efficient worker.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, we have more say than we think we do.
it's a screwed up point that I made, but I was sent to school. I mean, my parents probably had no thought the wiser, but I saw a lot of screwed up things. I mean, not
Well,
screwed
so
up,
did I.
but screwed up things in terms of like the behavior of teachers.
Hmm.
Um, if that's an educator, and sure, many people did educate, but if that's if self control, I mean, then again, you're dealing with a bunch of kids. But just the whole thing was that you said, it's sort of like almost like a training camp to
For
close the
efficient
mind.
workers.
It just there was something. I mean, I could sit and really hone in on it, but I mean, it's real
Well,
life anyhow. At the same time, but when you take a fragile little human being and you sent them off into the school day with other kids, who knows if some of the I saw kids that were likely beaten like dogs
mhm.
by one of their parents,
Yeah,
and you could see that they had the problems at school.
yeah,
And those kids, you know what they would end up doing? They would end up beat hell out of other kids.
hmm, yeah.
um and all sorts of weird scenarios. And so, that is real life, I guess. But like, I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know. Just the system is set up in a way that it's set up, and kindness kind of slips through the cracks many times. Not all the times, probably more often than
Well,
not. But those times that it does, it sets the framework for bad conclusions by people, by kids,
yeah.
and bad conclusions that linger with them for a very, very, very long, long time.
And that's what I mean by parents. Now, you're talking about, how do you send your kids to something like that? You have more control than you think. The average parent has more control than they think. Because if you are seeing that kind of thing, if you're a caring parent that really gives a damn about the education of your child, you'll take your kid out of that and put them somewhere else. I know a lot of parents think they don't have that option, but a lot more have that option than realize it. I mean, it's a hard world. Let's face it. There has never been a golden age where everything went smoothly, and
Oh no, of
everything
course
that
not.
you saw in school and everything that I saw in school, our parents saw the same thing.
I don't know about that.
The only thing we can do, the only thing that we can do is control our reaction to it and protect our kids. That's all we can do. We can
It,
get our kid out of there. You went to private school for the first several years,
mhm.
right?
Yep.
That's an option. A lot of parents can't afford that. I get it. There are a lot of other charter schools around that are not as expensive as people think. A lot of people don't have that option as well. There's homeschooling. A lot of people don't have that option either. What I'm getting at is there are a lot of options and there are a lot of ways of handling it. It depends on you as a parent to do that. First, you have to be interested in it. You have to take notice. You have to ask questions. If you don't think your kid's getting the right education, it's up to you to make sure that they get into a place where they are. You know, I
I'm
mean,
just
I can't cure it. I don't have a cure.
No, I'm just stating that if you here's the thing. If you have a system with those things potentially there, I grew up experiencing it, watching it,
Mm-hmm. So
um,
did I.
and you yourself. And if you multiply all the kids that go on to become adults, After going through that process, um, there you have one of the problems, because now you have adults, many of them
Well,
not questioning. See, you know, it's not anything we could do anything about necessarily, unless it's our individual situation.
it has to
To the
be our
degree
individual situation before we can do anything about it, because it's up to us as the parent to be the role model.
the
It,
meat grinder system is the meat grinder system.
right. And that's why you've got to decide if you're going to send your kids through that meat grinder or find another way. But ultimately, you're the parent. You have to be the parent. It's not your job to be your child's best friend. It's your job to be their parent. And that is an important job. You have to be the role model. You have to be the stability. You have to be somebody that they can look up to and look at. You have to be the person that they know they can trust.
Yeah, on an individual level, yes. On the personal, I'm talking
And,
about the broad scenario.
but but that the broad scenario is made up of individuals,
What I'm saying is,
and all you can do is what you can do.
no, I understand that. I'm just calling it what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying that, you know, you could be that family,
Mm-hmm.
but you're surrounded in a sea of problems.
Yeah.
And that sea of problems, in this particular case, it's this education situation we're talking about. But if you compound it with all the other things, this is the climate that sets up a situation for all the things that we said that people aren't doing anymore, because
And
now we have access to internet and ready to go information, for better or worse. It's ready to go, and people make their calculations, and they're like, what the hell? This is like, you know, people, I mean, there's plenty of channels out there. People are like, man, this situation, I mean, they're saying it, this is the first generation that, when asked, parents and kids, and I'm paraphrasing this, but it could be looked at, believe that the next generation that look for is going to be worse off than the previous. They've done polls and stuff,
well,
and
if you're out to make it a self-fulfilling prophecy, then yeah, just keep doing what you're doing. That's what I'm getting at. If you think for yourself, you're less likely to be led down that path.
I'm saying that at the broad level, at the personal level, you can do everything that you can do. Yes, I agree. But at the broad level, asked that
But
the lay of the land. Well, there is a thing called polling, and this is what I'm saying.
understood, but what I'm getting at is the broad level is made up of individual levels.
Of course, I understand that, Mark. I'm just saying that at the broad level, when polled, the expectation always was across the time, especially
Mm-hmm.
in the United States. I don't know about
Mm-hmm.
other parts, that the next generation
Mm-hmm.
would do better. There was that expectation.
Yeah,
Whether individuals did or did not do better,
understood. Yeah, I understood the results of the poll. This is the
yeah,
first generation that thinks the next generation is going to be worse off.
right. And
And
that
to
in
me, that's a self fulfilling prophecy because they're allowing themselves to be taken down that path. If you see you're headed off a cliff, do you step on the gas or do you step on the brake? That's what I'm getting at.
the people living today
Hmm.
are working within the consequences and scenarios that exist today.
Hmm.
Many of those things are out of their hands because there's people that are in charge of X, Y, and Z. All those things create the condition, not just one thing or the other. And yes, individually,
Hmm.
as best you can, you create the conditions for you and your family, in spite of whatever problems exist. But there's things that are simply shifting the boat in a direction
Hmm.
that gives people the confidence, or lack of, to say such things. And and it's all part of it. The influence of what we see readily available on it's from my vantage point of a person from the last century.
Hmm.
It doesn't look good. It just simply doesn't. I know it's in our individual. You're right. I'm not dismissing that. I
Right.
agree because it's ultimately true. But the conditions, it doesn't look freaking good. It
Right.
just
So
it,
what do you do when conditions don't look good? You have two choices. Actually, you have three. One is continue to fan the flames and watch it get worse. The other is do nothing and hope it gets better. Or the third is, to use your metaphor about the boat swinging with the tide, throw out an anchor. Throw out two if you have to. What I'm that and that's the whole point that I would been trying to get at the whole time. No, we can't stop public opinion. We can't change public opinion. We can't we can't force anything. All we can do is work within our own lives as individuals. But the entire broader sense is made up of those individuals. And if I'm doing what I think is the right thing, and to hell with these people that are trying to make me mad or anger me or tell me that I'm worthless or tell me that the next 10 years the world's going to burn, and just focus on what is going on right here, right now, plan for my future, try to raise my family the best way I know how to do, and try to teach them to think for themselves and always do the next right thing, that then I've thrown out my anchors and I'm ready to fight the storm on my own. Yeah, there's a sense of doom and gloom that doesn't have to be there. But why is there that sense of doom and gloom? It's because people think they're out of control. People, what I mean by that is people think they have no choice. They have lots of choices. People think that, well, this is all fixed from the top and we're just screwed. Well, how did those people get to the top? We put them there. And we can fire them like that if we wanted to. But we don't think that way. We think, well, we just have to go along to get along. And so they've turned us into a group of people that are afraid to talk to one another. Because if we talk to one another, we'll discover that all the crap they've been spewing is simply that crap. See, this is the most dangerous thing. What we're doing right now is the most dangerous thing to these people. We're having a civil discussion. We may not agree with one another, but we're having a civil discussion about it. We're not yelling and screaming. Ain't no pitchforks and torches going on here. And they're powerless. That scares the bejeebers out of them. Because the minute they lose their power, they lose their control. And
oh well.
that's why I don't partake. I don't listen to them. Nobody in Washington or in Salem is going to tell me who I can associate with, who I can call my friend, whose business I can go into, or whose newspaper I can read should I choose to. It's 100% my decision. And they can go urinate up a well-oiled rope for all I care.
Well, I mean, I so
We're only lost if we allow ourselves to be lost. Is I guess is maybe I'm just hopeful. Maybe I'm just naive. But I really honestly think
what do you think that I think? What do you think that I think?
I think you think I'm full of crap. Or maybe that I'm a little bit old fashioned or a little bit too jaded. Or maybe I am ignorant. And maybe I'm all those things.
Damn, Mark, you
But
crap.
I just don't I refuse to let someone else decide my happiness.
I think that you apparently are a guy glass half full.
I'm,
I
on that score, I'm a guy that's you going to drink that? No. Go ahead.
oh
It's
look,
not
you
half
see,
empty. It's not half full. It's like I'm thirsty.
yeah, I think that you're a guy half a glass half full. Um, but here's the thing, though. I don't know if I'm a guy. I'm probably a guy glass half empty. It depends on the subject. Um, when it comes to things that, man, I'm gonna say this. Maybe a year ago or more, you sent me a video.
Hmm.
It was one of the most consequential videos that anybody could ever send somebody.
Which one was that?
Well, I'm gonna tell you. And in that video, it's called "Rules for Rulers." I'll resend it back to you because you sent it to.
Yeah, because I but do get into it because
So you said, "Hey, this is cool. Check this out. This is interesting," and I was like blown the heck away. The video, using little cartoons, goes about the business of explaining the power structure and how things work.
hmm
And in it, it reveals the system.
hmm
Some people listening to this now or in it later in the aggregate might say, well, any video could say anything and this and that, and that's fine. Or not, but like, let's say many people would say, it's just, but now here's the thing. In the video,
hmm
it explains here's a ruler. I'm going to give you the brief summary. Here's a ruler,
okay.
and you may think that we all elect somebody and they're there to do us good. But rulers can't do anything. They need people to do things for them on their behalf.
I remember it now.
So the ruler needs keys that
Hmm
people under them in the military, in certain political and media and this and that have to open. But these people will not open those keys to the ruler unless the ruler pays them treasure, money,
hmm
power, influence. But those people below him have to pay other people that have other keys throughout society, and it keeps going, going, going down. And then they show the example of two different systems: a democratic system, more or less,
hmm
and a dictatorial system. If you have a dictatorial system, you have less keys, you have more power concentrated in the government. And people often ask, here's the key to this thing, ask, why is it that we elect rulers and they never do anything for the people in any positive change? And that's because the system, be it the dictatorial one or even the democratic one, in this video, and it's clear.
hmm
If one looks at it with an open mind and says, well, let's see, they don't, your consent is only valuable when you're casting that vote. But they have a structure of people they have to pay before you get any of yours. And usually you don't get yours as a normal citizen because the system is structured in such a way that the money scheme, the power influence scheme, stays at that level.
Right.
And everybody else is basically Joe Citizen. Well, in that explanation, they mention another key thing, super key. And that is that people, citizens, often argue or question or say out loud, these leaders are so dumb, I would never do that. In order to get X outcome, you need to do Y, but they always keep on doing Z and they get it wrong. These people are stupid. No, they're not stupid.
hmm
What these leaders are doing is that in order to stay in power, they're giving the treasure to their keys that have specific needs to be met in order to keep the mutual relationship in functioning. And the people are basically, according to this, they didn't say the word, but essentially what they're saying is cattle.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know that I'm important to myself because I'm me and I'm driving this vehicle, and I know that you feel the same, and citizens to themselves, roughly thereabouts.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact is, and by the way, in real world, comparing the U.S. to any other country, we have a lot of advantages, and uh, there's a lot of movement around. But the structure
Mm-hmm.
in the ways that we see that are problematic goes to what you said in the beginning a long time ago. Anyhow, if they wanted to change things, they would, because they have the power to do so, the keys to
Yeah.
do so. But the problem is, if you watch the video, it explains why the
They
average
won't.
Joe guy looks at these people and says, "That's stupid. Why they do?" Well, they did that because it's all they're working with each. That's what they do.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
sent me that video.
And I remember it. I didn't remember the title, and I'll tell you what I'm going to do because we need to land the plane anyhow. I just found it. It's by CGP Grey. It's called Rules for Rulers,
Mhm.
and I'll post it over on the Trampled Underfoot podcast Facebook page.
Yeah,
So it is 19 minutes 33 seconds, but it's worth watching. So I'll post it over on our Facebook page, and you can check it out for yourself. It's worth watching. It's very good.
I found it indispensable. I found it so clear, and it unlocks all the doubts and all the bull crap that people usually get stuck in. Oh, this guy's such a dumb butt, and the other one's such an tool shed. And why does this guy this and that guy that? Oh, because the system isn't set up to please you.
The only thing you have to remember is left wing, right wing, still the same bird. It's all the same bird.
Yeah,
And
the
I don't
video is
and
is
that's
important.
why I don't partake. That's why I'm not constantly bombarded with that crap because I've turned it off. I don't listen to it. I'm not bombarded with it because I choose not to be. We all have that choice.
No, but once you accept myself, go ahead, go ahead.
I do accept it. I do accept it. But what I'm getting at is I understand the system, but it you know as well as I do, it doesn't do any good to say something once. You have to keep driving it in there because the more often you tell the lie, the easier it is to become the truth.
Oh,
The quicker it'll become the truth. So that constant bombardment of this is going wrong and this is going on and the world's going to burn and we're going to do this and that and the other and la la la. Easiest way to avoid all that crap is turn it off.
all I was gonna say is that
Mm-hmm.
once you intellectually accept
Mm-hmm.
certain realities of the world around you, yes, you may get all riled up because there's different levels to it.
Right.
But broadly speaking, the, I have a thunderstorm coming around.
Heard it.
Broadly speaking, when you see these things, these
Mm-hmm.
interactions, you're like, yeah, this is this interact. When you third person yourself
Mm-hmm.
and you view something and you realize this is the lay, this is how, this is the land,
But
this is how it is. It's no longer, yes, you can get, like, I've gotten pissed off with certain things, but you already know that we're in basically a situation and Mickey Mouse pretend land that I
mm-hmm.
want to be, I would want my Mickey Mouse pretend land, and I slip into it every now and then, but I know that that's not real. That's not real. What's real is that this is all a bunch of, you know what.
Mm-hmm.
So then that takes out that, like, I see all the pundits and I'm looking at the information, but I don't. I I know that it's all a bunch of hogwash anyhow.
Yeah.
So why watch it anyhow? Well, it's part of, again, we slip in and out of of a paradigm. You know, we slip in and out. We're human beings,
Yeah.
you know. But I know it's all rigged, you know, broadly speaking.
Then why listen to them? Some people find it entertaining, and that's legit.
Well, I have
But
intellectual necessities. I want to see what people say and see how they can overcome objections over a topic,
uh,
because reasoning is important to me. To one,
understood.
yeah,
And to me, that falls within the sphere of that's entertainment for you. It's an
yeah,
intellectual stimulation,
yeah.
and
I
and
mean, it is what it
and
is.
and yeah, and I get that, and that's legit. I stopped being entertained by it, and it's like, if I'm not enjoying the party, check please, I'm gone. You know, if I'm not, if I don't like, oh hell, name a reality show, I'm changing the channel.
Oh no, I changed
and
the
and
channel.
and I've seen their version of reality shows. No thanks.
No, I changed the channel too. I look.
So it's
Look,
just
I
to
changed the channel too according to what I my taste.
but we, and I mean we as a society, because it's not just you and I. I hear, whoa, I hear that. I hear the thunder is what I hear.
Yeah.
We better wrap this up quick. Holy cow, 2.5 hours. Um, I hear from a lot of people that we're constantly bombarded with this and that and the other. And I'm like, did you ever think about turning the switch off and just not listen to it? You
Well,
know?
but the problem is that. By the way, Mark, let me
Hmm.
just tell you, just so that you know, that thunder you're hearing,
Hmm.
all of South Florida
Well,
is clear skies, and just a ring of red is over Sweetwater. No bull crap. Go look in your maps now, and you'll see a ring, and it's right over
well,
Sweetwater.
let's go ahead and land the plane while you still have the electricity to do so.
Um, well, no, but I just wanted to say, people get wrapped up in paradigms,
Hmm.
and you can watch the same information and believe what they're saying, or watch the same information and see the dialogue that's occurring and
Hmm.
find the gaps in logic or the problematic parts that
Sure.
don't jive.
Right.
And you can learn something from that on a personal basis.
Okay.
You decide what you want or
Hmm.
don't want, like the rest of us. But
Sure.
obviously, just like Jerry Springer back in the 80s or whatever,
Hmm.
um, it's there because people are watching at some point.
and
You know,
and that's my point. If you're going to watch that, don't complain about it.
oh no,
Don't
but complaining.
complain, but don't complain about being constantly bombarded with this and that and the other if you choose to keep listening. If you don't like the Jerry Springer show, change the channel or turn it off. Don't
No,
just
but
sit there and complain about it.
yeah, but that's not the reality of a human being. Human
Sure it
beings.
is. You have a choice.
No, it's not the reality. Well, let me explain. It's not the reality of human being. It may be your reality under this topic, but I am sure throughout your life you have done today, recently, and in the past, whether it be more or less, your share of complaining over this, that, and the other, be it news or something besides. It's part of human. It when we're presented something, um,
Well,
we have the reaction that we might have, and we can go ahead. Go ahead.
right. Then be prepared to be met with a wall of silence because I just don't care.
No, for you, I'm talking. I'm not talking. I'm
I know
not
I'm
talking about
talking,
you.
dude,
I know your stance.
that's all I can talk about is me. That's the only thing I can control. Okay? Because I can't control what you do and I don't want to control what you do. If you get intellectual stimulation out of that, that's fine. Great. I mean, beautiful.
Imagine.
I'm talking about the people that I'm hearing around me that say, well, we're constantly bombarded with this. You're bombarded with it because you allow yourself to be bombarded with it. That's my
I'm
point.
saying we can't escape. You can personally escape everything. You can do what you're doing. I could do the same.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying that millions of people, this information is there.
Mm-hmm.
People watch it.
Mm-hmm.
If they get wrapped up in it for whatever reasons they do,
Mm-hmm. That's
according to
their
the
trip.
exactly, it's their trip according to their
Mm-hmm.
reasoning. And I'm just saying, if you're given a narrative on the news or whatever it is, and you accept the premises that are offered you wholesale,
Mm-hmm.
then you're being strung along with that narrative,
Yeah.
and the options that you're given to say yes, no, A, B, C, D, those options, you're working under that paradigm. And a lot of people, it's
You're s-
hard to escape that paradigm all the time. You could do it sometimes if you can think that you sometimes are in error, or maybe a lot of times in error, and let me look at this critically, taking taking the opportunity to step and look. You could do that, and that's, for me, that's an intellectual process. For some people it's an intellectual process. For other people, they might believe the narrative and they're stuck in it, and there's nothing that you can say to change that about certain
and
people.
I don't try to change that. I'm not trying to change that. Stalin had a word for those people. Well, a phrase for those people. He called them useful idiots. And the world is full of them. The world is full of them
I'm gonna
because
give you
they're just going to fan the flames.
I'm gonna give you an idea of how somebody tries to change a narrative. Look down at the comments. See
Mhm.
Harneal.
Well,
Harneal.
that's because I've been trying to land the plane for 10 minutes.
Harneal. I've been trying to land the plane. Every time I try to finish saying something, you say something,
Well,
and
that's
and then I,
because
and then
you're
and then I
making
have to,
blanket statements, and I'm saying you have a choice.
and I'm saying, wait a second, you can't just say that, and we keep
Sure, I
rolling.
can.
You see, so you tried to lay it on me,
Sure,
but
I
I
can. I
threw
can
it right
say
back.
it, and I'll say it again.
You
You
see how
have
I
a
threw that one?
choice.
You see how I threw that one right back at you?
Yes,
Because
you have a choice.
it takes two to mambo.
I'm serious.
All right,
And but in all fairness,
you see,
to Steve, let's put that down there.
Mark's. Wait, crap! I was gonna say this in a clever way, but for some reason that ticker tape is going so so. I was gonna just use you as a, but since the ticker tape's going so fast, I can't really. Mark's views do not represent that of the sponsors, everybody. But my views are also not representative. Yeah.
You see this comment? This is the tower. You going to land this plane or what?
We've got enough fuel to
And we're
fall
just
into the
burning off
marsh.
fuel now.
So, anyways, we did solve the world's problems in this one show.
And
So
caused a few.
I just want to say that we organized reality. Um, Listen, thank you guys for hanging out with us. We go live every Tuesday at 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific Coast time. We have a website as well as a page on Facebook, Trampled Underfoot Podcast.com, and over on Facebook. And we're sponsored by.
We're sponsored by, I'm, I'm just going to say it, one of the coolest people that I know. And I'm serious about that. I'm not kissing up to him because he knows I won't do that. Um, Steve over at Harneal Media. You hear me talking about this all the time. Do I have to say it? Oh, I do. Okay, I'll do it. You know you want a website. You know you need a website, whether you think so or not. You need a website. Today, these days, we complain about technology, but we all embrace technology. And the one way to give yourself legitimacy on the web is with an established web presence. And there's no better way to do that than with your own website. I have one, and I'm glad I do. And I'm also glad and very proud that Steve over at Harneal Media handles it for me because I just ain't smart enough to handle it. He's very, very competitively priced, and you get 100% personalized service. When you deal with Harneal Media, you're dealing with Steve, not some nameless, faceless person in some call center somewhere. And probably the best thing about it is Steve gives you performance. He doesn't give you excuses or try to convince you that you can live without something. He'll get it done. Do yourself a favor, get over to Harneal Media. There's a link to Harneal Media in everything you'll find on this YouTube channel, and it's that way for a reason. Hit Harneal Media, click that contact us button, and reach out to Steve. He will take care of you, and you'll be glad you did. Thank you for what you do, Steve. You're appreciated more than you know. Harneal Media, HARNEAL Media, sponsor of TrampledUnderfootPodcast.com.
All right. All right. Well, we did it again. We're out of here. You guys have a nice week. Be safe. And we'll catch you next time. Same bat channel, 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific. See ya.
Peace.